Why, hello there, Jacob here. And today, well, it is finally time. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Week 14 is finally here. And what does that mean? Well, actually, two things. First, tonight's game, which, by the way, I'm recording this on Thursday, is the Packers Lions round 2 at Ford Field in Detroit. And then probably the most important thing, or at least one of the biggest headliners from this season, Kirk Cousins revenge game. So let's go ahead and kind of break this down. So yeah, as I said first, tonight's game between the Lions and Packers is going to be a very big indication on what the path for the Vikings may look like. I mean, obviously, there's still 5 games to be played. Anything can happen. I mean, heck, the Packers could swoop in and maybe take the 1 seed. The Lions could just keep on rolling. Or maybe even the Eagles or the Vikings pop up in there, too. You never know. But basically, both scenarios tonight have a pretty big indication on the Vikings. So, if the Lions win, then that gives us separation between the Packers and kind of cushions us as the number 2 in the NFC North. Probably going to end up being that way unless we absolutely crap the bed against them come either week 16 or 17. I can never remember if we played them. I want to say we played them week 17, because if I remember right, that's the last home game sandwiched in between the Seahawks and then, of course, week 18 in Detroit. But we'll just kind of wait and see on how all that works. So, yeah, if the Detroit Lions win, then we basically more than likely maintain the number 2 seed in the NFC North. Or, finish number 2 in the NFC North. Unless the Lions somehow drop a game or 2 in between here. And they do have a couple of tough games, including against Buffalo at home, I think next weekend. Not this upcoming weekend, but week 15. And, yeah, so. But if the Packers win, then that opens the door for the NFC North. And who knows? The Vikings keep winning and the Lions drop maybe 1 more or something like that. We could be having a completely different discussion come Packers week and even come week 18. But again, I'm not necessarily going to go down that path till we get there because, well, this season's mantra has been just go 1-0 every week. And then that will bring us to this current part of the video here that will basically be on the minds of a lot of Minnesota Vikings fans, myself included. Why? Because we host the Atlanta Falcons, who are kind of on a little bit of a skid coming into this game. I mean, well, our pal Kirk Cousins just got off of a 4-interception performance against the Chargers, which, yeah, not a great look. I mean, I will say, though, the Chargers are a tough team, and they are very good. Jim Harbaugh-led teams usually aren't the sexiest on paper per se, but they're one of those I could, death by 1,000 paper cuts type of team. And you definitely don't want to mess with them come playoffs time. But anyway, so yeah, coming off of a very bad performance, maybe one of Kirk's worst performances, maybe not ever, but it's got to be up there. He comes back to U.S. Bank Stadium for, I believe, the first time as an opposing player. May have to fact check that, but I'm pretty sure this is actually his first game at U.S. Bank Stadium being a visitor. Because remember, we signed him in 2018, let him go before this offseason. He had some good years with us, this and that and the other thing, but you could definitely tell he's not the same this year. And then him and his wife moved down to where his wife's family is from in Atlanta, takes that massive contract, and already Atlanta Falcons fans are saying it's time to move on to Michael Penix. And us Vikings fans are like, yep, have fun, Yeah, because oofta. I mean, I think if they cut him or whatever the case might be, I think that's over like $100 million in dead cap over I don't know how long. Trust me, as a Minnesota Wild fan as well, we know a thing or two about having to eat dead cap over several years. Not fun. Not fun. But anyway. So yeah. The Falcons come into town at 6-6, tied with the NFC South with, well, Tampa Bay, who's actually kind of risen again after having a little bit of a mid-season meltdown themselves after some injuries, especially to Mike Evans. That really hurt them for a few weeks. But anyway, so yeah, Atlanta comes to town kind of on a little bit of a skid. Kirk Cousins just, from what I've seen, like highlights of him over these last few weeks and stuff like that, he just has no zip on the ball anymore. You know, he's still coming off of that Achilles injury, and now he's right around 36 years old. I mean, it's basically a whammy after whammy after whammy coming into this game. So what does that mean? Well, if you're Brian Flores, obviously, you know, he was here last year, so you kind of understand his tendencies. You kind of understand how well he is, and you definitely know he's not at 100%. Take advantage. Yes, I know we're down a couple of our key people on the secondary, especially with Stephon Gilmore going down, and the Vikings actually signed a veteran free agent in Kelvin Joseph, who's a depth corner, you know, depth defensive back piece, but hey, I mean, you know, it's either that or Dwight McLaughlin, who's played maybe 5 seconds of football in the NFL so far. If anything, maybe he's had like a cup of coffee and tea or something like that, but that's about it. And Fabian Moreau, who, I mean, God bless him, he tried as best as he could, but Marvin Harrison Jr. took him out to lunch last week for a few games, which, yeah, I mean, to be expected when your number one corner goes down and, you know, you're kind of thrusted into action without any warning or without any notification or whatever, but, so yeah, we have an extra depth piece. However, though, pressure, but you got to be careful how you pressure. Because the Falcons, if there's one strength I'd say on the Falcons, I will say that offensive line is pretty damn solid. You know, anchored by Chris Lidstrom, who's a borderline all-pro pretty much every year, if I, you know, remember correctly and stuff like that. Wonder if they still have Jake Matthews. Anyway, regardless, you got to get pressure on Kirk and get him uncomfortable because, again, as Vikings fans, the second the pocket breaks down and the second he has to do really any sort of improvisation, he usually folds like a house of cards. I mean, it's not good because we've seen that happen so many times. And sometimes his pocket awareness isn't the greatest either. So if you can come out, you know, if you can like whip around him on a blind spot and he doesn't feel the pressure coming, we've seen several strip sack fumbles. Granted, he did kind of clean those up as years went on, but you just got to get home. Because if you don't get home, Kirk Cousins has guys like Bijan Robinson, who is basically a Swiss Army knife, Drake London, who is a low-key underrated receiver. He just never had anyone to throw him the ball. Kyle Pitts is one of those hybrid players that, you know, has a lot of potential and a lot of talent. Just, again, hasn't had the proper coaching and proper quarterback play to help him out. So, yeah, those three guys alone can wreck a game. And they also have good depth with, like, Tyler Algier, who is a 1,000-yard running back, too. Ray McLeod, who's a speedster. Darnell Mooney, I mean, how many times has he burnt us as a Bear? You know, it's like, they have weapons if Kirk Cousins can get the ball down the field. So that's going to be key number one. Key number two, flipping it on the other side, take advantage of the defense. Because the Atlanta Falcons defense has a grand total of 15 sacks as a team this year, averaging 1 a game. Granted, last week they went off for 5 of them against the Justin Herbert-led LA Chargers, but it's like, yeah, literally a third of their sacks this season came last week. So they might be turning a page a little bit here, but that's been one of our biggest bugaboos too, is taking care of pressure. Because last week, I think Darnold got sacked like 4 or 5 times on just some good scheming. I mean, they may not have the greatest players in the world, but, you know, they were young, hungry, and they got home more than enough times to throw Darnold off. So let's not have a repeat of last week. So what does that mean? The interior offensive line has to be good. You know, Darnold has to, you know, read the hot routes. Look for disguises. Look for something that could be a little bit like, okay. And then KOC, you have to write up hot routes to, you know, basically don't keep going with 5 to 7 stop, you know, 7-step drop backs all the time. You know, maybe a few bop go plays, you know, just get the ball out of the hands here, because that tends to be working so far for us. You know, those 5 to 10 yard routes versus trying to go for kill shots all the time. And also Sam Darnold, you don't have to go for kill shots every play. You know, those developing plays and stuff like that. Yeah, sure, if you have the looks and you have the protection, why not? But you also have to be careful because they have one of the very underrated secondary, I will say that. That is led by A.J. Terrell and, of course, arguably one of the best safeties in the league in Jesse Bates. So, kind of got to be careful in that secondary a little bit here. And also, for the love of everything holy, Aaron Jones, AJ, I love you, buddy, but hang on to the ball, please. Like I say, last week, I'm not saying we would have, you know, went down there and blown out the Cardinals or anything like that, because there's still a lot of game. But when you already fall behind the 8 ball by fumbling it or turning the ball over, you know, yeah. You know, last thing you want to do is give Kirk Cousins and those weapons on offense any sort of momentum, because, well, we've seen what they can do when fully healthy and stuff like that. And, again, they have some studs. So, just for the love of everything holy, offense, hang on to the ball. Defense, let's get some turnovers here. Let's turn up the heat. And, let's walk out of there with a massive, massive W. Because, again, if we win this game, depending on what happens tonight like that, we could be setting ourselves up for something very, very special. And oh, by the way, there's a potential chance that we could clinch a playoff spot come Sunday or Monday morning. I'm not really going to break all that down because if I remember right, it's kind of confusing, but I think the biggest one, or the one that's probably going to be the most likely occurrence, is if we win, Arizona loses against Seattle, and if the Rams lose against the Bills, then we're in, if we win. So, but again, we'll just kind of, you know, I'm not going to look at that. I'm just going to go ahead and have us win this week, and then if we have to go next week against the Bears on Monday night, so be it. But at the end of the day, just go 1-0, and whatever happens, happens. But we're in a really good spot to give us a playoff berth. And then real quickly here before I leave, you know, now that we're coming up onto week 14, the last full month of the year, and then the playoffs are starting, if you would have told me we would have been 10-2 in December, I don't even think I could have believed it here, because, I mean, I knew we were setting up for something special, potentially, but I would have thought this season would have come next year. So, enjoy it, Vikings fans, because who knows? I know this offseason is going to have a lot of questions. I know there's going to be a lot of things that are needing to be answered, but I'm going to let the front office take care of all of that. But, hey, 10-2, we're looking good. I mean, nobody predicted us to be anywhere near here. I would have been happy with 9 or 10 wins total, because I still thought we had the talent to get it done. It was just going to be a matter of how does Sam Darnold look. But, yeah. Future's bright in Minnesota. But let's go out there and welcome back Kirk Cousins, Kirky boy, the best way we know how. Flattening him on his ass, having him throw interceptions, and walking away with a W. Nothing personal. So until we meet again, this is Jacob, Skol Vikings.